The first time I saw her, she was a shadow in the corner of the studio, a new face among the regulars. Our evening yoga class was always dimly lit, candles flickering beside lavender-scented diffusers, but her mat was placed just outside the golden halo of the lamps. I didn't think much of it until we began the flow. Downward, warrior one, child's pose. Every movement I made, she mirrored exactly. Not just the poses, but the tremble in my plank, the way my left hip always hikes higher in pigeon pose. Even when I fumbled, she corrected herself only after I did, as if connected to my mistakes by an invisible string. By the third class, I started arriving early, claiming my usual spot near the windows. She'd glide in moments later, unrolling her mat directly behind mine. Her reflection in the glass showed hollows where her eyes should have been, swallowed by the dusk outside. I told myself it was the tinted windows playing tricks. But then I noticed her breathing, shallow, rhythmic, perfectly synced to mine, even when the instructor cued us to hold. One night after Savasana, I lingered to ask the teacher if she'd noticed anything off. Off, she laughed, wiping down mats. You mean Janice. She's been coming here for years. My throat tightened. Janice had moved away 6 months ago. I'd attended her farewell potluck. The following week, I skipped class. Drove to a coffee shop instead, ordered chamomile to steady my hands. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw her, standing beneath a flickering street lamp drenched, staring at the empty parking space where my car should have been. Her head tilted slowly, as if listening to a voice only she could hear. I started taking different routes home, changed my gym schedule, but she began appearing elsewhere. A silhouette in the grocery store aisle, a figure paused outside my apartment lobby. Never close enough to confront, always just watching. My friends shrugged it off. You're stressed, they said. Get more sleep. The final class I ever attended, the studio lost power mid-session. Emergency lights bathed the room in blood red. The instructor vanished to check the breaker. Mats rustled as others giggled, fumbling for phones. I froze, behind me slow, deliberate breaths. A hand grazed my shoulder, icy skeletal. I spun, but the room was empty, except for her mat, still warm, imprinted with the shape of a body. That night, I confronted her in the parking lot. Rain lashed my face as I screamed, "What do you want?" She stepped into the glow of my headlights. Pale, gaunt, lips stretched into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You invited me," she whispered. "Every time you wished someone would see you. Really see you." I lunged for my car, keys slipping in my grip. As I sped away, the rearview mirror flickered. For a heartbeat, her reflection sat in the back seat, head cocked, repeating my every panicked blink. Now I avoid mirrors, puddles. But sometimes when I'm alone, I catch a flicker of movement in my periphery. A shadow bending when I bend, reaching when I reach. And in the silence, I hear it, the soft, wet sound of breath that isn't mine. I don't do yoga anymore, but she does. Every night in the dark of my bedroom, my body moving without me. I don't go to yoga anymore, but sometimes in the mirror my reflection hesitates and smiles. The first time I noticed her, I thought it was a coincidence. My yoga studio was always dimly lit, candlelight flickering over mats, the scent of lavender oil clinging to the air. But even in the shadows, her movements were precise. Mirror images of mine. Downward dog, warrior 2, even the shaky transition into crow pose. When I glanced over, she was already staring, her eyes unblinking. A smile stretched too wide, as if her lips had memorized the shape but not the warmth. I told myself it was paranoia. Work stress, maybe. My therapist said I'd been catastrophizing since the breakup. But every Tuesday and Thursday, there she was, late to class, slipping in just as the instructor dimmed the lights. Her mat always 3 feet behind mine. Her breath sensing with mine, a half-second echo. Once during Savasana, I felt her fingertips graze my ankle. The instructor said I'd imagined it. Then came the matching details, the same Lululemon leggings but in black instead of navy. My chipped turquoise water bottle, hers was mint green. Last week, I found a hairpin on the studio floor. Vintage, rose-shaped, just like the one my grandmother gave me. Except mine was still in my drawer. Hers, the instructor said, had been left behind. "Maybe you have a secret admirer," he joked. His laughter dissolved when I showed him the engraving inside the pin, my initials. I started filming my sessions. phone propped discreetly against my towel, capturing the room behind me. But in every video, the space where she should have been was just empty, a blur of shadow. Yet when I turned around during class, there she was, smiling, mimicking, inching closer. Tonight, I confronted her, waited until the others left, then blocked the studio door. "Are you doing this?" My voice shook. She tilted her head, that smile never faltering. Up close, her features were familiar. The curve of her jaw, the faint scar above her brow, like staring into a warped reflection. "You invited me," she said, pulling a crumpled flyer from her bag. "A free yoga class. First session complimentary." My handwriting, my apartment number scribbled at the bottom, but I'd never made a flyer. She stepped closer, her breath sour sweet. "You're lonely. I'm lonely too." Her hand closed over mine, ice cold. "We'll be perfect together." I wrenched free, bolted in the rain-soaked parking lot. My hands trembled too badly to unlock the car. When I glanced back, the studio was dark, empty. But on my windshield, smeared in the fog, was a rose, drawn in lipstick the same shade I'd worn yesterday. Now at home, I keep the lights blazing. The hairpin sits on my kitchen table, and I swear the roses on it have bloomed wider, richer, like they're feeding on something. Outside, a shadow lingers by the street lamp, breathing, matching my rhythm. The studio's dimmed lights always soothed me, casting long shadows over the mats like ink spilled on parchment. But that night, the air felt heavier, the scent of lavender oil sharpening into something medicinal. I unrolled my mat in the back corner, as usual, habitual, safe. Then she walked in, late, no one else noticed. Her mat hit the floor beside mine with a slap. I flinched. Her movements were liquid, mirroring my every stretch, my raised arms, the arch of my spine. But a half-second faster, like she'd rehearsed my routine. When I glanced over, her face was serene, eyes closed. Coincidence, I told myself. But the next week, she arrived late again. Same loose black leggings, same twisted bun, my outfit, my hairstyle. Her mat edged closer. I shifted left, she shifted left. I skipped a pose, she paused, waiting. The instructor, Leela, never called her name, never corrected her form. When I asked after class, Leela frowned, hooed. Paranoia itched like sweat. I started locking doors twice, checked windows. My reflection in the bathroom mirror seemed foreign. Had my posture always been that rigid, that hunched? By the third session, she'd stopped pretending. Her mat pressed against mine, her breath sensing with mine, in, out, until I choked. I fled to the bathroom, trembling. When I returned, the studio was empty except for her. She stood in the center, facing the mirror, arms limp. "Why are you doing this?" My voice cracked. She turned, her face twisted into a smile too wide, teeth gleaming under the red exit sign. "You invited me," she said, voice a distorted echo. "You wanted to be seen." Ice flooded my veins. I'd posted yoga videos online for months, desperate for validation, tagging locations, routines, habits. The studio door slammed shut. Her footsteps clicked closer, echoing the rhythm of my racing heart. I don't remember driving home, don't remember packing. But I left the city, changed my name, deleted every photo, every trace. Yet sometimes, when I enroll my mat in some cramped new studio, I hear it. The slap of another mat hitting the floor. And I know if I turn, she'll be there. Closer, perfecting every pose, waiting for me to slip so she can take my place.